Namaste. Telugu Prajala Mana Sakshi TV. I am Swarna. Welcome to Sakshi TV special immigration show with attorney Prashanthi Reddy from the law office of Prashanthi Reddy PLLC. Please note down that Sakshi TV now has 3 immigration shows every week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Sheila Murthy, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy, and on Friday 6 p.m. EST with Banu Ilindra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you have any queries regarding immigration, please feel free to call our attorneys. Would like to answer your questions. If you are immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call us at 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note down that the information provided in this show is not a legal advice. It's for general information purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents are not responsible for the use of this information. If you need a specific legal advice, please contact attorney directly. Today, we are going to talk about F1 students' do's and don'ts. For that, we have our attorney, Prashanthi Reddy with us today. Without any further delay, let's start our show by welcoming Prashanthi. Hi, Prashanthi. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. So, can you please provide information on your law officers, practice areas, and your experience, please?
I practice immigration law, and you can reach me by going to my website, www.reddyesq.com. Yeah.
Thank you. So, viewers, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, our number is 212-354-1010, extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. Without any further delay, let's start our show. So, Prashanthi, what is SEVP certification and do schools need it?
Right. So today we are starting a new module on F1 because new students are going to be coming in very soon in August. We'll have a batch of new students. And there's a lot of rules and regulations that go into being a student. And most students don't know that there is so much regulation involved in maintaining your status. So a lot of times, unfortunately, students fall out of status due to their own lack of knowledge or because they didn't follow up with their designated school officer, the DSO, or they didn't follow up on certain documentation that needs to be maintained, or just the DSO made a mistake and didn't upload their documentation on time into the SEVIS system. So, and they're becoming more and more strict with reference to F1's maintaining status. So, thought we would start this module on F1 students and start off with, I'm not going to give you do's and don'ts with reference to general life or what a student should do. That is, I think, common sense. Don't get arrested, right? Follow the rules. Don't do what you're not supposed to do, etc. What to do at an interview is also something that's really common sense. What we're going to talk more about is the rules for the before you get started on an F1 visa, what rules, what you need to follow, what you need to look into, and after you get started, what you need to look into, how to maintain status once you start, how to maintain a full course of study. What is a full course of study? So all these questions we will go into. Even if we don't finish this week, we can, we can go into it next week as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We have a caller, Ms. Prashanthi. We have Mahesh.
Let's take the caller before we start.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Mahesh.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Can you
hear me? Yes, Mahesh, how are you?
I'm doing good, ma'am. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How can I help?
Thank you. So my PALM is applied in February, and my employer is receiving a lot of PALM audits. So how do we know whether it's a targeted audit or a supervised audit or a regular random audit? Is there a way that we can identify?
Well, a supervised audit you will know. Right, a supervised audit you will know because it's a different process. And they will tell you it's a supervised audit. That supervised audit, during the time of a supervised audit, supervised recruitment takes place, which means that the resumes go directly to the DOL officer. The officer will monitor the resumes, whatever you get, and they will send it to the employer, and they will ask them to interview those applicants and submit a recruitment report. So that's supervised recruitment. So that you will know. Other than that, whether it's a targeted or a random audit, you will not know. Most probably your employer knows, because, or the attorney that's working on your case will be able to answer that question, because there'll be certain questions asked, and also the employer will have information that you may not be privy to, that maybe there is a DOL audit going on, or maybe there is a USCIS audit going on in his office, but you will not know that. Generally, audits are not that common. During COVID last year, there were more number of audits when compared to the years before. But I think now again things are slowly going back to normal, and I don't see that many audits. I haven't received an audit in a while. So usually whenever the job market is tight, or whenever immigration is shutting down and closing the gates, they like to increase the number of audits and make it a little bit more difficult, or increase scrutiny during the perm process. But a random audit is usually an audit just saying, send us the advertisements, show us business necessity, send us, it's a boilerplate audit. So all audits look the same. So an attorney should be able to look at an audit and say whether it's, the normal audit. But sometimes they ask specific questions, and that may be one way you can determine if this is targeted or if there is some issue with the company.
Ma'am, I have one question as well. So this year starting, there are 6 firms that's been rejected from my employer, and the reason we weren't sure, but the employer is telling like when we upload the information, something messed up, and that's why we have denials. And after the denial, whatever the firms that's been applied, it's been audited. So you think it's a target audit?
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes less sense. So they've pretty much blacklisted kind of that company, and they're auditing all their cases. It may not be that way forever, but I think for maybe a year or two, they might audit them more than other companies. And usually that's why when there is a perm audits start off by being random. But once you respond to the perm audit, and if you are not able to show that you did what you're supposed to, because it's an honor system, right? When you file the labor cert, when you file the perm, you're not submitting any documents. You're not submitting the advertisements. You're saying that you did the advertisements. You're testifying to that in the perm application. But you're not actually submitting it, because DOL expects you to follow the honor system and be truthful. So when you say in your perm that I did this advertisement, I did it from this state to this state, and when they send an audit, which is a random audit, right? They'll send an audit saying, send us the ads. So if you're not able to send them the ads, or you did not do the ads, then obviously then it's going to lead to all your cases getting audited. Now I understand that uploading, we usually don't upload in the system. We like to send it out by FedEx. Simply because I don't trust, that system, and I don't know whether all the documents have been uploaded or not, and I'm not very comfortable. Call me old-fashioned, but I'm not comfortable with that. So I like to send a paper trail, and so I FedEx everything to them, even though there is a system of uploading. So it's possible that when you're uploading some documents, you might think you sent, but did not get uploaded or got corrupted. But usually if it is within the audit period, they can always ask for it, especially if you're doing it via email or, uploading it directly to their system. They understand also that, there can be errors because this is technology, and they might ask for it. Usually I have submitted by email sometimes, and I have always ask them, is it complete? Is there anything else you need? And then they usually send an email back saying that, it is complete. If we need anything, we'll get back to you. So we don't know what is the reason that that was not done, or documents were not submitted. It could be that the employer did not really do what they were supposed to do, and so I understand what you're saying, that and I understand why that company is getting audited, because once you get one audit and you're not able to respond, then it automatically follows that all your other cases will get audited. Then it's no longer
I have one
a
last
random
follow-up
audit.
question.
Yeah.
If a perm gets audited, am I eligible to apply for my I-140 and 485, or do I have to wait for the audit? If I have to wait for the audit, how many months the audit is taking these days?
So whether audit or no audit, you cannot file an 485 unless the perm is approved, right? So that has nothing to do with the really perm being audited. You have to wait for the perm to get approved. Only then you can file a I-140. I understand you might be anxious because your priority date is close. And also, there might be forward movement, right, in the next few months with reference to both EB2 and EB3. So the perm, you have to wait for the perm approval. And if there's an audit, you have to unfortunately add about 6 months to the perm processing. So yeah, usually it takes about 8 months, but if there is an audit, it can take longer. And I would give it an additional 6 months. Hopefully it won't be in your case, but it does take 6 months sometimes.
Thanks for your knowledge. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Ms. Prashanthi, we have Mr. Kishore from Pennsylvania. We have another caller.
Hey, hi, Prashanthi garu.
Hi, Kishore.
Yeah, this is regarding a question about my change of status related query. I was an L2 EAD, and since that extension is being filed, but after April, my H1 got picked up. So when USCIS, when we filed for the H1B approval, they asked that it is in like your status is been questioned because like your L2 was in pending, so we cannot do the change of status to H1 right now. So in this scenario, do I need to wait for L1 or L2 to get approved and then only I should proceed, or is there any other way where I can get my H1 approved ASAP?
So they shouldn't be saying that, because you're allowed to file a change of status based on a bridging petition. And there is a bridging law, and there is, that can be quoted in responding. So if you got an RFE right now, you have to respond to the RFE saying that as per the bridging law and etc., as long as the pending petition is approvable, they should be able to approve the subsequent H1. As long as you have filed that petition, the pending petition, while the I-94 was still valid. You are allowed to file for a change of status based on, because it's not your fault that the L1 is taking so many months to get approved, right? The L2.
Correct.
So that's not your fault. You have no control over how long the USCIS takes to process the L2. I mean, bad enough that they're taking so many months. On top of that, they're not willing to approve a subsequent petition when you're trying to get yourself into status and start working. So that's ridiculous. So, I know they say that, but there is, you can talk to your attorney, but there is something called a bridging petition and a bridging law, and that can be used to respond to your RFE. As you have no control over it.
Okay. Yeah.
Is the primary L1 approved, or even that is pending?
Even that is pending. So it is kind of all are pending actually. L1 and L2
right.
And now in H1 as well.
Right. Yeah. You're not out of status, but my suggestion is wait for the to respond to the RFE. Don't respond immediately. Wait for that 80 days, whatever time they give you. And remember, after that, you also have another 60 days to respond. I guess your attorney will decide what needs to be done, but I would wait because you don't need to respond immediately. And by then, hopefully your L1, the L1 will get approved, maybe try to convert it to premium processing. But still, L2s are taking a long time for approval, so They shouldn't be saying that in the RFE. If you have no option of waiting, then I would just respond with the bridging law.
Okay. Since we still have time till October 1st, so I think wait and watch will
There's
be
no
better.
harm in waiting for some time. Yeah.
Got it. And in September, there is a L2 law is premium processing law is going to affect. Is it true?
We don't know.
No, it okay.
We have not heard so specifically that it will go in September. I don't think they have the manpower. I don't think they'll do it because, in October again, there'll be a big rush for filing 485s. So all their resources and time is going to be taken up there. So unless they really bring in more employees to adjudicate cases, it's going to be difficult for them to premium process these cases. To broaden their premium processing horizons, it's going to be difficult for them to do that. But let's see. I have not heard anything.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your response. I'll take into consideration.
Good luck.
We have our next caller, Miss Uma from Texas.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Uma.
Hi. I'm on H1B visa, living in San Antonio, Texas. So my visa gonna expire on September 22. The max out period is on September 22. So my perm got initially, like my employer is filing my perm. For the first time, it got rejected for reasons last year, and again they have filed. Now I got audit for the job and recruitment process. So I'm just wondering, like the next year my perm would, my H1B max out would come, right? So I would like to understand, is there any way to avail my status, like what I'm supposed to do right now?
So your H1 is expiring this September or next September?
Next September 22.
Okay. So you still have time. Even if there is an audit, it should get resolved in about 6 months. So you do have time. So just sit tight. You have time.
Okay.
If it gets denied, then you have a problem. If it gets denied, then you have a problem. But if it doesn't get denied, then you have enough time.
Okay. So maybe like if it suppose for some reason if the decision is not coming as a positive, then what are all the chances? Like I need to do it before reaching to
then,
that.
Yeah, you may not have. Yeah, then it's difficult. Then it becomes very close because you may not have time then to refile, because refiling then takes another year and a half for it to get approved. Then you will have to either leave the country or you will have to file a change of status and stay in another status while your labor is pending. And once it gets approved, then again file a change of status to a H1. So 2 options, either you leave the country or file for change of status.
Okay. So is it possible to get maybe like one more year of extension? Maybe like this process gonna take more than a year, because I got the perm response after 8 months. Right now, whatever the perm which we are getting audit, that they have filed on November 2020. November 2020. So is there any chance to get one more year of H1B extension based on the perm?
Right. So yes. So they will count it from the date of filing the new perm. So if more than 365 days elapse from the date of filing the new perm due to maybe an audit, right? So the processing time takes longer. If it is pending for more than 1 year, then as of that date, you can file for an extension for 1 year.
Okay, let's say like if I don't receive any response before November 2021, maybe like my employer, recently I got the audit, so my employer is sending all the information, whatever they asked. Maybe if I don't get the response from USCIS before November 2021, so my employer can file one more year H1B extension, right?
That's correct. But what might happen is that you might get the response before that, and it might be a denial, in which case then you'll have to follow the other options.
So if it's denied, then I have to go with another perm filing, right? Maybe like
Yes, but
before
you cannot,
November, if I get the
then,
decision.
yeah, right. But that's not enough time for it to get approved. So you'll have to, in the meantime, change status or leave the country.
Change the status in the sense, like, do I need to change the status as a student visa or something? Because
To whatever status you can change, is the visitor's visa, student visa, or a H4 if you're able to do a H4, whatever it is.
Okay, the change of status, I can do it. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. I think, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for all the information.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you, Sima. All right. So, Prashanthi, can we go back to our questions? Like, what is like SCVP certification and do schools need it?
Right. So, so SEVP certification is Student and Exchange Visitor Program, SEVP, Student Exchange Visitor Program certification. And this authorizes schools to issue I-20s. The I-20 is the Certificate of Eligibility for non-immigrant status. So that is needed. The I-20 is needed for all prospective international students. So after they get an admission, the next step is to get an I-20. In order to get an I-20, the school has to be enrolled in this SEVP program because the I-20 is issued with the approval of USCIS. Absolutely, you do need the SCVP program to get that I-20. The schools need to be enrolled in the SCVP program. And in order to be enrolled to get that certification or to maintain the certification, they must comply with certain policies. And there have to be some reporting requirements, some record keeping requirements that they need to send to USCIS. And if they don't, then they may lose their accreditation, and then they will not be able to issue I-20s, and thereby they will not be able to enroll F and M students, foreign students. It's important that they get that certification and maintain it as well.
Okay. So, how does an international student know if a school have a SEVP certification?
So you can go online and check. You can go to the SCVP database and search by school. All the certified schools are mentioned in the database, so they can go there and check. And obviously, if they don't have it, they will not be able to issue the student an I-20. And also, there's no point in the student approaching that university if they're not SCVP certified. So it's available online. They can go and check on the website.
Okay. So, viewers, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, her number is 212-354-1010, extension is 107, and email ID is prashanthi@reddysq.com. So, Prashanthi, how does an international student receive a form I-20 and why do they need one?
So, as we were just saying, the university, the university has to become a part of the SCVP Student and Exchange Visitor Program. It has to be certified, and then that university or school will then send the student an I-20 form after admission of the student. The I-20 form is Certificate of Eligibility for Non-Immigrant Student Status. It's important that they use that form. So basically, they might receive several I-20s, several admissions, and then they'll get several I-20s, from different universities. That happens quite often. So it's important that they use the I-20 of the school that they plan to study in. So don't use I-20 of one school and then go join another school. So that's important. Without an I-20, first of all, you cannot. It's used for many different purposes. One is to pay the 901 SEVIS fee. You have to first pay the fee. Second is to apply for a visa. Unless you have the original I-20, they will not give you a visa at the consulate. So that's one of the most important documents you need. to go for the visa interview. And then once you get the visa, in order to enter into the country at the airport or the port of entry, again, the CBP, Customs and Border Protection, will ask for that original I-20. So you need to show it at that point as well. Also, if you're filing for a change of status, or you're extending your F1 status, or you're filing change of status to, say, a H1, then again, you would need to submit that I-20. And if you're filing for extension, you have to submit the original I-20. If you're filing for a change of status, then a copy of the I-20 is fine. So at all these points, again, if the student is applying for a driver's license, he's applying for EAD, OPT, EAD, or CPT, or the student is applying for a social security number. In all these instances, you need the I-20. So that's a very important document to have. And it's important once you get it, obviously, to keep it safe. And if you have lost it, then the university can issue a duplicate I-20.
That's good. So what is the difference between form like a I-20, a visa, and a student status?
These are different things. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but each one has a separate significance. As we know what the I-20 is. It's a document that's issued once a university has SCVP accreditation, and it indicates the primary purpose for coming to the United States, right? So if you're coming to the United States for a particular purpose, it will help with that purpose. Basically, you're saying that without that, basically, you cannot come. So that's one thing. So now a visa is a travel document which is given by the student. So the visa, the travel document is given by the student. The travel document is given by the consulate, sorry. The visa is given by the consulate in order to enter into the US. So that is kind of like a travel document that allows you to enter into the US. Right, so that's a visa. And then the status is something that the student acquires once they arrive into the country. So when they arrive into the country, they're given an I-94. And the I-94 will have their status and the duration of the status as well. So it'll have an F1 status stamped on the I-94, will have an F1 status stamped on it, and there'll be a DS, which means for an F1, when you say status, unlike a visitor's visa where they'll give you a specific amount of time that you can remain in the country on a B1 or a B2 or most other non-immigrant statuses, for an F1, the unique thing is they don't give you a particular date by which your status will expire. They say DS, which means as long as you're maintaining F1 status, and there is no limit for how long you can be on an F1. So as long as you're maintaining F1 status, you're considered to be in status. That's what duration of status means. So there's a difference between status and between visa and between the I-20, of course.
Awesome. So before we talk further, so viewers, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly at 212-354-1010, extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So Prashanthi, where can international students find financial aid and scholarship information?
So international students usually can find, they can go to educationusa.com and they can find also Education USA Advising Center for information on school financial aid. Usually they list out all the schools and what aid they're providing. So you can go there and find financial aid.
So can international student attend a K-12 school in the United States?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. So a lot of people think that international students means only undergrad or master's program, not school. But there is an opportunity to attend K-12 also. But you have to remember that can attend K-12 provided it's again accredited, like SCVP, as we said, SCVP certified, and if it is a private school, they can attend it. But international students cannot attend public schools. Either elementary or middle schools, they cannot attend at all. But they can attend public high schools. But there is a restriction on that. Public high schools, they can attend only for 1 year. So that there's a distinction between private schools and public schools, and for public schools, they can attend only for 1 year maximum. So that's interesting to know. And as I said, for public schools, they cannot go to middle school or elementary school on an F1. But if you're on F2 or an M2, so a dependent, then there is no restriction. You can go to, dependents of an F1 can go to school, public school or private school or whatever it is. There's no restrictions at all. And the school doesn't have to be accredited certified by a CVP. So that's only for F1s, but not for their dependents.
Wow, there's a lot of difference, Prashanthi. I mean, thank you for clarifying that. So viewers, if you have any more questions, please reach out to Prashanthi directly at 212-354-1010. Extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So Prashanthi, can international students bring their family members to United States while they are studying?
Right. So then we were just discussing about the dependents, the F2s and the M2s. Yes, they can come to the US. So spouses, of course, can come, and children under the age of 21 are considered dependents, so they can come on an F2 or M2 status. Anyone above the age of 21 then is no longer considered to be a child under the definition of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So they will have to find their own way. So a lot of times children age out because of the long wait for green cards. People are on H1 for years and years together, and their children age out of the H4 or age out of the F2. And in that situation, then they'll have to perhaps get onto F1 themselves. So yeah, children can come under the age of 21, spouses can come. Unfortunately, children or spouses cannot work on an F2, but they can study. Again, they are in status only as long as their parents are in status. If the F1 falls out of status, then F2 automatically falls out of status. So that's something to keep in mind. And as I said, they can go to school, so there's no restriction with studying, but there's a restriction with working for dependents.
So what is accreditation, and how does Accreditation Act apply to SCVP certified schools?
So there are a lot of terminology that we've been using, SCVP certification, I-20. So in addition to that, universities are accredited by various organizations, meaning they're considered to be bona fide universities by those particular accreditation agencies. And there's a database for the US Department of Education maintains that database. And accredited schools are given accreditation based on certain criteria. So while in order to get a student status or an I-20, you don't have to be an accredited school, accredited by the Department of Education. But for example, when you go on a H1, and if you want to file a H1 under master's cap, under the master's cap quota, then you have to be, you must have a master's degree from an accredited institute. So it really depends on for what purposes we need it, but for F1 purposes, it really doesn't matter. There's no requirement for most schools. They can get an SCVP certification and they can issue I-20s. There is some requirement, new meaning since 2010, there is a requirement for English language schools to get accredited. So that's the only exception. But otherwise, regular schools don't have to get an accreditation just for bringing foreign students to the US.
Okay.
But I mean, it just makes sense to join a university that it is accredited, because then your next step will be filing for a H1, and so you will not get under the master's cap if you're doing a master's. And in general, accreditation plays a vital role even where your jobs are concerned. They want to make sure that you went to a proper school.
So before we go to the next question, viewers, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, her number is 212-354-1010, extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So, Prashanthi, what is the difference between a vocational school and academic school?
Right, so a vocational school is a school where they teach a vocation. So it's like practical training. And an educational institute is where they actually teach subjects, and there's no practical implementation of that. So, for example, a vocational school would be preparing you for a certain job, or giving you training in a certain skill set. For example, a culinary school, you go to cooking school, they'll teach you how to cook. They're not going to teach you math, algebra, chemistry, etc. A cosmetology school, flight school, they actually give you hands-on training. That's called a vocational school. And you can get an F1 for that also. An academic school is simply an institution where they provide, they teach you scholarly courses like math, science, humanities, So our regular universities or colleges, schools are academic schools, but they're also vocational schools, and they're different criteria and different rules that have to be followed, but an F1, you can get an F1 for both, vocation as well as academic study.
Okay. So can international students study at both public and private schools in the United States?
Yes, but the only exception of that, the school, high school, I said, when you go to K to 12, you can only, if you want to be a student in F1, then you can only go to a private school. With the exception of public school, you can go for 1 year. If you can go to public high school, but only for 1 year. It's a weird law. I don't know why they have that restriction. I understand why they don't want international students in public schools, because they're already struggling, so they don't want more students to come in. But I don't know what that 1 year exception is. So anyway, yes, you can go to both, and often students apply to public schools because they're cheaper, more reasonably, the tuition is more reasonable. So yeah, you can go to both.
So can international students enroll in online classes, like online courses?
Traditionally, you can only take one online course per semester. But with COVID, of course, everything has turned upside down, and they were allowing all courses to be taken online, and then they modified that. So right now, what we're seeing a hybrid of courses in most universities, where some courses are being taken online and some courses are taken in person. So yeah, traditionally though, and also most probably for the future, once COVID goes away, it will only one course is allowed to be taken online, and that's takes us into a different topic, which is maintaining the full course of study. So it's important that you have to take certain number of courses to maintain that, and as I said, only one can be taken online.
So before we go to the further question, so viewers, if you would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, you can reach her at 212-354-1010, extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@sq.com. So how many classes, how many classes make up a full course of study for them?
So it's different for each course. For example, if you're doing an undergrad degree, there's a different number of courses that you need to take. I think it's 12 credits that you need to take. And if you're doing a master's program, then the university will tell you, how many courses make up a full course of study. So it's important that you have to contact the DSO and find out from them how many courses are needed to maintain status. And if you ever go under that, there are some exceptions, some instances in which they will allow you to go take less courses than the full course of study. So again, you have to talk to your DSO to find out what the requirements are for that. For example, if you're sick, sometimes they'll allow you to take a lower load, or maybe you've finished all your credits for for your master's or your bachelor's, and you only have a few credits left. That's when you can again take less than the full course of study if you've already finished all your requirements. So there's some exceptions to that, but it's in general for master students, they have to contact their DSO and find out what is the full course of study.
So do different rules apply to international students depending on what type of school they attend?
So international students, yeah, they have a whole set of rules. So yes, those rules do apply to international students, and they are different from, obviously, if you're a US citizen, you're not on an F1. So none of the rules apply to you. For an F1 student, there's a certain set of rules that apply, like the full course of study rule, maintenance of status rule, not being able to work without authorization rule. There are so many rules that apply to F1 students that don't apply to US citizens or permanent residents.
So what does it mean to maintain status?
Also, sorry, I forgot to add. Also, if you want to transfer school to a different university, those rules are different also if you are an international student. How long you're allowed to stay after in the country, because it's all dependent on you being a full-time student. So those restrictions are not there, obviously, for other people, but they're there for F1 students. So how many? What is your question? What does it mean to maintain status, right?
Yes, Ms. Prashanthi.
Yeah. So again, as I said, maintaining status is fulfilling the purpose of your visa. Meaning, if you're coming as an F1 student, then you have to study. You can't not go to school if you're on an F1. And of course, following the regulations associated with that student status. That's what maintaining status is. So as long as you maintain your status, you're in status. There's no expiry time for your status. So you cannot work off campus without a CPT. You can work on campus for a certain number of hours only, 20 hours. So there are a lot of restrictions. You have to maintain a full course of study. So all this is really goes towards maintaining your status.
So viewers, before you like to discuss more about these things, so you can reach out to Prashanthi directly at 212-354-1010, extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So Prashanthi, do international students get vacation time?
Yeah, they do. Because if the university is closed, then there's no classes to attend, so they're allowed to take a break. But really, there is a distinction between F1s and M1s there. M1 is the vocational students that we were talking about. F1 is the academic students. So, and it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I won't get into what an M1 is right now. But in general, for an F1, they're eligible to take an annual vacation after they complete the one full academic year as a student. So, they take a break in the summer. But an M1, they're not eligible for annual vacation. So they have to go to maintain their M1 status even during their vacation. Also, SCVP, the schools close for short periods of time other than their the annual vacation. So during the spring break or during holidays, US holidays like July 4th, Since there are no classes, then the students are allowed to take a break also. So one break after the classes are over after 1 year, and then of course whatever holidays they're allowed to take those holidays as well.
So are international students allowed to transfer schools?
Yes, they're allowed to transfer schools as long as they're following the correct transfer procedures. And in a situation, in most cases, the M1s are allowed to transfer within the first 6 months of their program. So in order for the transfer to happen, that SEVIS records have to be transferred to the new school. So which means the DSO or the existing school has to be willing to transfer the SEVIS record to the new school. And only then will they be allowed to transfer schools. So there is some, again, rules and regulations there as well. So you have to make sure that you follow them.
Okay. So viewers, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, it's 212-354-1010. Extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So Prashanthi, if an international student needs more time to finish their program of study, what should they do?
So they have to, as I said, yes, it's possible, but they have to talk to their DSO as soon as possible to do that. And then they have to get permission from the DSO. The DSO will then extend their SEVIS, right, or issue a new I-20 as required. So for the M1s, they have to work closely with their DSO to apply for an extension within, the designated time frames. So before their before their coursework expires or before their college ends, they have to make sure that they extend it for the next semester. For F1s also it's the same thing. They have to speak to their DSO prior to the program end date. The program end date is usually listed on the I-20. So the DSO will then see if the F1 is eligible or qualifies for a program extension, and they can update the SEVIS, and then they will issue a new I-20. So everything has to be done in a timely manner. And enough time has to be given for processing as well, so they don't fall out of status.
When does withdrawing from a class becomes a violation of status?
So we were discussing that a student must enroll in a full course of study in order to maintain their status. So under certain circumstances, they may be eligible to reduce their course load, as we discussed earlier briefly. But they must again talk to their DSO and have their DSO authorize a reduced course load by dropping a few credits, by dropping below a full course of study. If the student drops below a course of study without the DSO's authorization, that is pretty much a violation of their status. So as you see, and I was talking about some instances when the DSO can allow that. So as you see, the DSO has complete control over the student's life and has a huge role to play in their maintenance of status. So we can only hope that the DSO does, their due diligence, because oftentimes students fall out of status because DSO does not do things on time or makes an error in doing something, in updating a document or sending a document. And then, the problem with that is the DSO doesn't suffer, but the student does. They fall out of status, which is a huge problem.
So viewers, if you like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, her number is 212-354-1010. Extension is 107, or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So Ms. Prashanthi, what is the I-901 SCVS fees and how much does it cost?
So now we have basically gotten the I-20 and we have to travel to the US, and so in order to travel, you have to pay the fee. So all students have to pay that fee before the visa can be issued. So before you can go for a visa, you actually have to pay the congressionally mandated I-901 SEVIS fee, and that's the fee that supports and maintains that SEVIS program. So that's the fee, and basically the SEVIS fee can vary depending on the circumstances. But yeah, that is extremely important because you can't go for the visa unless you pay the fee.
So, how do international students pay and receive a receipt for their I-901 SEVIS?
So they have to. So students must present proof of that at the visa appointment. So basically, once they pay it online, they get a fee receipt. It's an online payment, and that fee receipt can then be taken to the visa officer for the interview.
Okay. So, how do international students who have not begun studying transfer their I-901 SCVIS fees to different schools?
So they can request it. Again, go to the website, SEVIS website, and request. International students may request to transfer their SEVIS fee directly from, and there's a website, fmjfee.com. Or they can also request it via mail, or they can also send in a letter asking the SEVIS fee to be transferred to a different university. Once the student requests a transfer online, they'll receive an automated email confirming their submission. That takes about 2 business days. And then once the student and the SCVP adjudicates a request, the student will receive a second email once it is adjudicated, meaning the request is processed. And that will be the decision from SCVP, whether they are allowing it or not, and what are the next steps to follow. And if it's approved, that's fine. It's the next steps. If it's rejected, then they will give an explanation as to why the fee can't be transferred. So it's a request that has to be made by the student. So usually when they make that request, they must give their date of birth. They must give of course, their SEVIS ID number so that they can associate the fee with the SEVIS payment. And then a new SEVIS number is generated, and that is sent to them via email, and that is again then taken to the consulate.
So, what can international students expect at a US port of entry?
So I think, when can international students enter? What is your question again, Swarna? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh no, it's like what can international students expect at a US port of entry?
Okay. So just before that, we have to talk about, I guess, when can they enter, first of all? When can international students enter the United States to start studying? So a prospective student can enter at least 30 days before their official start date. So if they're going to start on August 30th, right, then they can enter on August 1st to start studying. They cannot enter 6 months before. But they can enter 1 month before because, orientation, finding a place to stay, etc., that takes time. So that's 30 days. And of course, they have to enter before the program starts. That's, so it's and also it's recommended that as soon as they enter, that they contact their DSO. If the student cannot enter United States for the term listed on their I-20, or if they will be late, or there's some delay of, in entering, maybe they will miss a few classes, that they must immediately contact their DSO so that the SEVIS information can be updated and accurately reflect that information that they're going to be entering late. If they don't do that, then their SEVIS record will be invalidated and they'll fall out of status, and then they cannot enter. So important at every point of time any change, contact your DSO. Make sure, follow up with them, make sure that they have, recorded the change. Very important. Then coming back to your question on
What they can expect at
what they can expect at the port of entry, whoever arrives at the port of entry will be subjected to an interview by CBP, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The CBP officer will verify the students' information, ask them questions to find out what is their purpose of their visit. Because sometimes they're afraid of fraud, so sometimes students may pose as an F1 student, but they might come and actually work at a gas station and not be interested in, going to school. So oftentimes, for example, if their school is in the West Coast and they're entering from at the East Coast in New York, they're entering in New York and their school is in San Francisco. Sometimes the officer will ask them, okay, so your school is in San Francisco, why are you coming to New York?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there is a reason like, I'm coming ahead of time and I have a relative in New York and I'm going to be visiting them and then, then take a domestic flight to San Francisco, that's possible. But questions like that arise because they're trying to prevent fraud. So that's what happens really at the port of entry. They want to make sure it's almost like they can ask anything that they asked at the consulate, they can ask again the same questions because they by law can disallow them from entering into the country again, even though they have a visa.
So, what documents do international students need to enter or re-enter the United States?
We were talking about that. They need obviously they need the I-20, the original I-20, right? You need a passport to enter, and you need a visa stamped in the passport. So these are three basic documents that you need that they will ask you at CBP when you're entering into the US. And if you have some other peculiar situation and you want to, so for example, you're coming in late. So then you have to carry documentation to that effect as to why you're coming in late and that you have permission from your DSO to come in late, right? So also, for example, proof of financial ability, maybe they might ask any question that they ask at the consulate. So it's not a bad idea to carry a proof of financial ability or acceptance letter to the school. That means admission letter has to be carried in addition to the three documents we mentioned. The student re-entering after vacation maybe, they might be asked for their driver's license, social security number. If they are working in the US, they might ask for the EAD, employment authorization document as well. So it's important to have all these documents in hand when you're re-entering or entering the country.
So thank you so much, Prashanthi, for clarifying all the questions. Viewers, before we wind up, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to Prashanthi directly, you can reach her at 212-354-1010. Extension is 107. Or you can email her at prashanthi@reddysq.com. So this is Swarna signing off. You're watching Telugu Prajala Manasakshi Sakshi TV. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.